Hi everyone, today we are going to be learning how to make one of these little mini books here. I did a post recently on Instagram about these three little books and got a lot of feedback, and a lot of you expressed interest in learning how to make one. So here we are. I am going to show you the start to finish process of making one of these little books today. They're really easy. It might look pretty difficult just from the get-go, but I'll take you step by step along the way and it'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, you'll have one of these little books hopefully by the end of the tutorial. So there are a few supplies that you will need for this one, and surprisingly you'll find that most of it you've probably got lying around at home. You can apply any sort of material to this, but basically first of all you're going to need about 16 pieces or 16 strips of paper. You will also need some pleather or polyurethane leather, I think it's called vegan leather, of any different colour, and I've got a strip of a brown leather at the top there. You can use anything you like. Some other strips of fabric that you can use for the inside of your cover. This is some heat and bond. I had some adventures with this the first time I used it, but you will need that as well. You will also need some strips of suede cord or leather cord, it's up to you, and you'll also need some embroidery cotton, different colours, it's up to you, a needle, I used a bone folder to help the folds on my pages, a pencil, an awl, box cutter, and a pair of scissors. First of all, we're going to tear our strips of paper. We're going to need 16 pieces or 16 strips of paper that you will then turn into 4 signatures. I've made the height of mine about 4 centimetres, and the page itself will be maybe 4 by 3 centimetres. You can apply whatever measurement feels comfortable with you. If it feels too small to make this size, you can make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to need 16 sheets that we will then fold in half, and we will make 4 signatures out of these pieces of paper. I'm using a 210 GSM mixed media paper, and because I like the rough edges on my pages, I am going to tear with a metal ruler or use the metal ruler as a guide. If you want to cut yours to make nice crisp edges, that's entirely up to you. There is no right or wrong way to do this, but I like that sort of old school roughed up pages look, so I'm going to be using a steel ruler to tear my strips. You'll probably note that each grid or each little square on my cutting board equals 1 centimetre, so I'm using that as a guide to create the height of my page while I'm tearing my strips. Now that we have our 16 strips, we're going to fold these in half, and we will create 4 signatures for our book today. Each signature will have 4 of these strips of paper inside it. I'm going to use my bone folder just to make the edges of my folds nice and crisp. Now that they're all folded, I'll just quickly make my first signature. And we'll do that 4 times. Now that we've got all our signatures together, we're going to create the actual width of the page now. So again, we're going to get just a ruler, a little steel ruler. Just check that it's 4 centimeters in height, and then we're going to make the width of the page about 3 centimeters. I'm going to use my cutting mat as a guide again, so I will find 3 centimeter blocks, and then I will tear the pages accordingly. You'll see as I tear my pages here that I tend to tear one page down and then one page up. I noticed that while I was making books, if I kept tearing the page down all the time, I seemed to end up with this extra bulk up in the top right hand corner of my books, which sort of made my signatures a little bit lopsided. So I found that using this technique tended to make my pages or my signatures a little bit more even in size. So this is a technique that works for me, and yeah, I found it quite helpful. So that's our first signature done. 3 centimeters in width and 4 centimeters in height. So now we'll just go ahead and do the other 3. And there we have our 4 signatures all ready to go. We'll just bundle them all together now and just have a look, make sure everything's okay. You can see how we've got those nice fluffy edges there from tearing with our steel ruler. So what I'm going to do now is just bundle them together, and I will get a clip and just bind them together just to sort of press them a little bit as you would with a book press if you were making a larger style book. Then we're just going to pop that aside and move on to the next step. To make the cover of our book, we want to sort of strengthen the cover a little bit. So this is why I've decided to use some heat and bond to sort of bond 2 fabrics together. The faux leather or the vegan leather is quite thin, so just to give it a little bit of strength, I've decided to add another fabric to the inside of my book. It also makes the book look a little bit nicer on the inside as well. You don't want to see an ugly brown on the inside of your book when you open that up. Initially, I had an interesting experience with the heat and bond when I first used it, and accidentally bonded the wrong side to my iron, which is why I've drawn on the other side or the paper side of the heat and bond, so I actually know which side I'm supposed to tear off. Should you accidentally do the same thing as me and end up with a big sticky mess on your iron, I have learned that just let the iron cool down and find one of those magic erasers and use some water, and you should be able to scrub it off fairly easily. I was able to salvage my iron by using this little nifty trick that I googled. So, but as you can see here, I've been successful in bonding the 2 fabrics together, and now I have something nice and strong and sturdy. So now that we have a nice sturdy cover, we're going to trim it to size. So you'll note that the signatures of the book were about 4 centimeters in height. Probably going to make this around 4.5 centimeters. in height, just to give you a few or a millimetre or two overhang from your signatures, just so everything's not too tightly put together. You might find that your signatures might hang over a little bit, so you don't want it too close to the edges, just in case that might happen. So about 4.5 centimetres should do the trick for you. I've gone ahead and sped this up a little bit for you. I tend to be a little bit meticulous with my cutting, so rather than bore you with how slow I am being at this process, I'm going to speed it up. Also, in case you're worried about the length of your strip for your cover, it doesn't really matter. You are probably going to be trimming it back a little bit anyway, so you can make it longer. And I would suggest making it longer rather than shorter, because obviously if you've got that length there, you've got plenty of room to play with when we cut that back a little bit later on for the flap or the cover of your book. Our next step is to punch the holes in our signatures so we can bind them to the cover of our book. Because this is such a small book, we can play it safe, or it's safe to say that you could probably just eyeball where you're going to mark these holes. If we were making a full-scale book, then we would absolutely be measuring where these holes would go. But in this case, to give it that little rustic kind of appearance, it is okay to just sort of eyeball. I've probably gone in from the edge about 5 millimeters from the top and from the bottom of the book. Then from those markings, I've probably gone in another 5 mil. All you really need to keep in mind is just make sure that you're not too close to the edges of your book, because you will be punching holes in there. You don't want to have no space for your thread and you accidentally be tearing through the top of your book. So you do want to go a little bit way down so you're not compromising the edges of your book, so to speak. I've decided to use a book that I've already made as a guide as to where I can mark my next set of holes. And just to go a little bit off topic, if you can hear some sort of random background noises today, I have decided to do the audio for this particular video after the filming of this exercise. The whole family was home yesterday and they were watching something completely inappropriate on TV. So I thought it best not to include that audio in with the video today. But while I'm recording this one, there's helicopters flying around outside. There is cars going down the street. So yeah, there's a lot going on. So my apologies if you can hear all of that. But what we're doing now actually is I'm just marking each signature 1, 2, 3, and 4, so I can keep track of which signature goes where when I'm going to be sewing it into the cover of the book. So the next step is to punch the holes into the signatures, and I will unfold the signature. I will line up the folds so I can make sure that when I do punch holes through the spine, that they are going to line up. and we'll do that 3 more times with all of the other signatures. Now that we've punched holes in our 4 signatures, we'll be punching holes in the cover so we can sew on our signatures. To line them up, I like to leave 1 millimeter or 2 overhang from the edges of the signature. This just allows for a little bit of room for our pages to move around when we're sewing on the signatures. So I would recommend starting with the very first signature in your book. You may have marked number 1 on it, and you are going to lay it down on the left hand side of your cover strip. This is so when you flip it over, this will essentially be the front cover. Then you are going to have a wraparound and you'll have the flap on the front, but this side is the opening of your book, the first signature you will see when you open your book. So you're going to line that up, then mark onto your cover where your holes are going to be in line with the holes with the signature that you have laid down on the top there. So with the other holes, again, we're just sort of going to eyeball where they will go on the spine. I'm going to use one I've made previously as a bit of a reference. So just by having a look through the signatures and where they've been placed on this particular one, there is probably about 3 millimeters between each placement of each one in the book. So I'm just going to sort of eyeball again and place a couple of millimeters in between each hole that I will be punching a little bit later on. And now I'm just going to go ahead and punch those holes in. You'll see that I've got a white piece of cardboard that I've been putting underneath my signatures and underneath my cover. It acts as a little bit of a buffer between the fabric or the signatures that I'm punching through and the mat, the hard mat underneath. It helps my awl go through a little bit easier. I've found that this works for me. I have seen other people who do bookbinding use this method as well. It's entirely up to you. So now we start the fun part. We're going to sew our signatures onto the cover of our book. Generally, when I'm sewing in signatures, I will start with the last signature in the book. In this case, it's signature number 4. But because we're sewing in 2 signatures at a time using the template that I'm going to provide, it doesn't really matter if you sew in signatures 1 and 2 or signatures 3 and 4. When I was filming this, I did sew my signatures in a particular way or in a particular sequence, but for you, figure out what works best for you. Generally, I start at the back and I work my way to the front. You can do the same. If you want to, you can start at the front and work your way to the back. This little template here is for sewing in 2 signatures. This is the front and this is the back, or the inside of your book. So these little stitches here are the ones that you are going to see when you open up your book. Now we'll begin stitching. We'll start at the inside on the bottom hole. Draw that needle through, leave a little bit of a tail so you've got some room or some length to tie off at the end. Find the same location on your cover, take your needle through. It can be a little bit fiddly, just sort of holding them together for a little bit. Once you've got a few stitches in, you should be fine. So now we've gone into signature number 3 at the bottom there. We're going to move over into the bottom signature, or the bottom hole of signature number 4, and bring the needle through there. We're going to pick up signature number 4. And we're going to take our needle through the back. Just creating a bit more of a hole. Like I said, it does get a little bit fiddly. Sometimes your pages move out of alignment, but there we go. So back in through signature number 4. Now what we're going to do is hold the signatures together as best you can, going through the next hole. We're going into number 3 now, and back out the other side. So we're still in signature number 4, but we're working our way back through to the outside of the cover. Looks like I'm struggling a little bit here. There we go. Just going to line everything up, take that needle back through to the outside of the cover on signature 4. As you can see, it is a little bit fiddly. You can use clips if you want to hold everything together. I've tried that before, and then I've just found that I've needed to take the clip off so I can get back inside another signature. You do eventually work out a technique of being able to hold everything together as you're sewing. This is a tiny little thing, so it shouldn't be too hard. So now we're going to cross over, and we're going to go back into signature number 3 to give us that crossover stitch on our cover. So we've just come out of signature number 4. We're going to move across and go back into signature number 3. Remember, you're going to go back in from the second hole from the top. I've gone in through the cover first, then I'm going to go back in through the signature. I'm only doing this because sometimes it's incredibly hard to line up the cover holes and the signature holes without stabbing a whole bunch of excess holes throughout. So that's why I've decided to go through the cover first, and then I'm going to go through the signature. So as you can see, we've started to get that crossover on the back. Now we're going to go back in through signature 3 out of that top hole and come back out on the other side of our signature. And as you can see, as we go along, it does tend to get a little bit easier to hold all of those pages and all of those signatures together. Now we're going to move across and move back into signature number 4 through that top hole. Moving back down, back in through signature number 4, and exiting back outside the cover again. You can probably guess where we're going to go next with this one. To make our crossover, we're going to head back into signature number 3 again. And finally, heading in through that last hole, back into signature number 3. So we're just going to tighten things up a little bit. Pull up from the signature when you're tightening your threads. Try not to over tighten. And try not to yank your pages or your threads sideways, because that's when you're more than likely going to rip through your signatures. So just gently pulling up or firmly pulling up to tighten those threads to secure your signatures onto the spine. Now all we need to do is just tie that off, and we have officially just sewn in the first 2 signatures of our book. And there we go. The first 2 signatures are in, and we have our little crossover effect, just like our template. What we'll do now is we'll sew in signatures 1 and 2 the same way. I am going to speed up that process on the next lot, but if you need to go back and see how that process is done again, then just move back to signatures 3 and 4 to show you what to do. there you go. We've sewn in our 4 signatures and we have that beautiful little crossover stitching done. What we'll do is we'll trim the crossover flap now. So we have that nice flap at the front there, and you can just cut yours if you want to. I like to have a sort of curved appearance to mine. It's up to you how you want the flap on the front to look. You could cut it into like a pointy look if you want to. As I said, just cut it flat. It's entirely up to you, but I like to have just a little bit of a curve to my flap. Again, this is just a matter of me eyeballing it. I do like that rustic look, so I'm just going to go ahead and roughly draw how I want my cover flap to look. And we'll just trim that to size. And now we come to the final stage of making our mini book today. We are going to attach the suede cord to the front that will bind our book closed when we're not using it. I'm going to measure a halfway point between the 4.5 centimeter height of the book, which I think is about 2.25 centimeters. Or you can just roughly eyeball the midsection of your book flap. The next step is to gauge how much cord you're going to need. I wrap my cord around my book about 3 times, so you can do the same or as many times as you like. So just wrap it around the book as many times as you want to, and then just cut a tiny bit extra to give yourself a little bit of room to play with at the end, just in case. The next step now is to punch some holes, or to mark a guide as to where you're going to put some holes, because we're going to sew that little piece of cord onto the inside cover with a little cross section stitch, just kind of like what we've used on the spine of the book. So now we'll just mark some dots to where we're going to punch those holes. Don't go too close to the edge of the flap, just in case. So make sure you go in a few millimeters from the edge of your book there. And just punch some holes in, just so your needle can get through a little bit easier than just stabbing it through the front cover of your book. So start sewing from the inside cover and start from one of the holes that's furthest from the edge of the flap there. Come in from the other side as you would if you were making a cross, and pull your thread tight. When we go back in through the next hole, we're going to leave a little bit of a loop. And this is just so we can fit our suede cord through. We're just going to slide it in, and it will make it that easier for us to tie that off when we place that through there. Then we're just going to finish off the rest of our little cross stitch on the front there. And then cut off any of the excess thread to finish this little bit off. So now we'll just take our little piece of suede or our little piece of cord, thread that through, give yourself a little bit of length to play with, and then gently pull your threads tight just to secure your cord to the flap. Now we're just going to tie those two threads in a knot. Make it nice and tight just to make sure that your cord doesn't come loose. And we're done. We'll just line everything up. And we're going to wrap our cord around our little booklet. And there we have it, our mini book. So cute, so adorable, and so addictive. I cannot stop making these. I've made so many, and I'm pretty confident you guys are going to make loads of these as well. I really want to thank you guys for watching my tutorial today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you like it, please drop me a like down the bottom there and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, any suggestions, any thoughts, any questions, just let me know. And if you like my video today, perhaps you can consider subscribing to the rest of my channel as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.